The notification pinged on my phone at exactly 9:47 a.m., just as I was pulling into my parents' driveway for what I knew would be another painful family brunch. Four simple words that would change everything. Vesting event now complete. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I sat in my 10-year-old Honda Civic staring at that notification for a full minute before the weight of it hit me. After 4 years of grinding 16-hour days, living in a studio apartment that barely fit my bed, and enduring countless family gatherings where I was treated like the family failure, my stock options had finally vested. All 50,000 shares of them at this morning's market price of $847 per share. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now, I had to walk into another Brennan family gathering where my success would be measured by the car I drove, the zip code I lived in, and the salary figure I could announce at the dinner table. I grabbed my worn leather purse, the same one I'd been carrying since college, and headed toward the front door of my childhood home. The house still looked exactly the same. Same manicured lawn that my father obsessed over, same pristine white shutters that my mother repainted every spring, same feeling of judgment that seemed to seep from the very foundation. Through the bay window, I could already see them gathered around a dining room table. My older sister, Patricia, in her designer blazer, probably fresh from closing another $1 million real estate deal. My brother Michael, no doubt ready to regale everyone with stories from his law firm's latest high-profile case. And then there was me, the tech worker, the one who'd chosen to work for some mysterious startup instead of pursuing a real career like everyone else in the family. The one who, at 32, still rented instead of owned, still drove a car that belonged in a junkyard, still wore the same 3 professional outfits, rotated endlessly because my take-home pay barely covered rent in San Francisco. I rang the doorbell, a courtesy my mother insisted on, even though I still had my key. She answered with her usual mixture of love and disappointment, taking in my appearance with the practiced eye of someone who'd been cataloging my financial failures for years. "Oh, honey, you're here. Did you come straight from work? You look—" She paused, searching for a kind way to say I looked poor. Tired. "Good morning, Mom. Sorry I'm late. Traffic from the city was brutal." I kissed her cheek and followed her into the dining room where the rest of the Brennan clan had assembled for our monthly family brunch. These gatherings had started as a way to stay connected after my grandmother passed, but they'd evolved into something more like a competitive sport where everyone tried to out-achieve each other. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence," Patricia called out, not looking up from her phone where she was presumably checking her latest commission statements. "How's the little computer job going, Emma?" I took my usual seat at the end of the table, the spot that had somehow become designated as mine over the years. Not quite close enough to be part of the main conversation, but close enough to hear every dig, every comparison, every reminder of how I'd chosen wrong. "It's going well, thanks." I unfolded my napkin, the same floral pattern my mother had used for as long as I could remember. "How's the real estate market?" "Incredible, actually." Patricia finally looked up, her eyes bright with the kind of excitement that came from making more money than she knew what to do with. "I just closed a deal in Palo Alto, $7.2 million. My commission alone was more than—" She paused, catching herself before she said something really cruel. "Well, let's just say it was a good month." Michael jumped in with perfect timing, as if they'd rehearsed this routine. "Speaking of good months, the firm just made me senior partner. The signing bonus alone was 6 figures. Dad, remember when you said I should have gone into tech like Emma?" He laughed, the sound sharp and familiar. Thank God I didn't listen. My father, cutting his eggs Benedict with surgical precision, nodded approvingly. "Smart choice, son. Stability matters. These tech companies, they come and go like the weather. One day you're employed, the next day you're looking for work when some app nobody needs anymore fails." "That's not really how it works, Dad." I kept my voice even, though I could feel the familiar frustration building in my chest. The company I work for provides essential software for essential software. My Uncle Tony, my father's brother, interrupted with a snort. In my day, we called that progress. Now everybody thinks they need an app for everything. Emma, what do you actually make at this place? What's your salary? The table went quiet. This was the question they'd all been building toward, the moment they lived for at these gatherings, the chance to quantify exactly how much I'd failed compared to their success. Tony, my mother said softly, that's not really appropriate to ask. Why not? We're family. Patricia just told us about her commission. Michael shared his bonus. It's not a secret that Emma is struggling. Look at her car outside. Look at her clothes. Honey, there's no shame in admitting you made a mistake. You could still go back to school, get an MBA, do something real with your life. Patricia leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, waiting for my answer with the satisfied expression of someone who'd already known she'd won. Come on, Emma. We're all adults here. What do they pay you to play on computers all day? The words hung in the air like smoke. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting. My mother looked uncomfortable but didn't intervene. My father had stopped eating entirely, fork suspended halfway to his mouth. Even my teenage cousin Sarah, who usually stayed glued to her phone during these family disasters, was watching with the fascinated horror of seeing a car accident. My base salary is $85,000, I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Uncle Tony started laughing. Actually laughing, the kind of deep belly laugh you'd make at a really good joke. 85,000 at your age? Emma, my neighbor's kid makes more than that managing a restaurant, and he didn't even go to college. You have a computer science degree from Berkeley. What the hell happened to you? Patricia was shaking her head, her expression somewhere between pity and embarrassment. Emma, that's really concerning. Do you realize how far behind you are? I made more than that in my first year out of college, and that was 8 years ago. How do you even survive in San Francisco on that salary? I manage. The words came out smaller than I intended. You manage? Michael leaned forward, his lawyer instincts kicking in. Emma, you're 32. You should be building wealth, not just managing. Do you have any savings? A retirement fund? Any investments? I thought about my portfolio, hidden behind passwords and investment apps they'd never heard of. The Tesla stock I'd bought at $47 a share, the Bitcoin I'd accumulated during the last crash, the index funds I'd been contributing religiously despite my supposedly meager salary, the diversified investment strategy I'd built over years of careful research and calculated risks. But mostly, I thought about those 50,000 shares that had just vested this morning. Shares in a company that had been worth pennies when I joined 4 years ago. Shares that these people, with their traditional careers and conventional wisdom, would never understand. I have some investments, I said. Uncle Tony waved his hand dismissively. What kind of investments can you possibly have on $85,000 a year in San Francisco? Emma Shatlery, you're living paycheck to paycheck. We can all see it. There's no shame in admitting you need help. Maybe you could move back home for a while, my mother suggested gently. Just until you get back on your feet. Your room is still exactly the way you left it. Or maybe, Patricia said, warming to the intervention theme, maybe you could switch careers entirely. It's not too late. Real estate is booming, and with your technical background, you could probably learn the software systems pretty quickly. I could put in a word with my broker. She could come work at the firm, Michael added. We always need paralegals, and the pay is definitely better than whatever tech startup is taking advantage of her now. 85,000? He shook his head again. Emma, you're being exploited. My father finally spoke up, his voice carrying the weight of disappointment that had been accumulating for years. Your mother and I have been worried about you. This whole tech thing was supposed to be temporary, a way to get experience before you found a real career. But you've been at this company for 4 years now, and you're barely making more than when you started. When are you going to admit this isn't working? The judgment in his voice was familiar, but it still stung.
4 years of proving myself in one of the most competitive industries in the world, 4 years of building products that millions of people use every day, 4 years of learning and growing and becoming an expert in my field, and all they could see was the number on my tax return. Maybe I should ask my friend Jennifer to talk to you, Patricia continued, apparently interpreting my silence as surrender. She's a career counselor, specializes in helping people pivot out of dead-end situations. I'm sure she'd give you a family discount. Dead-end situation. I repeated the words slowly, tasting them. Well, what would you call it? Uncle Tony spread his hands wide. You're 32, making less than someone 10 years younger with half your education, living in a studio apartment that barely fit your bed, driving a car that should have been scrapped years ago. If that's not dead end, what is? My phone buzzed again. Another notification. Then another. I glanced down at the screen, carefully.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
$63 billion, Emma. The board accepted. We're going public through the acquisition, and the stock price opened at $847 per share. The kitchen tilted slightly. I gripped the counter to steady myself. $847? Per share? Emma, do you remember how many options you were granted when you started? Of course I remembered. I'd stared at that offer letter for hours, trying to understand what it meant. 50,000 shares. With full vesting as of this morning. Emma, at current market price, your options are worth $42.3 million. Before taxes, obviously, but still, $42.3 million? The number hit me like a physical force. I actually had to put my hand on the wall to keep from falling over. That can't be right. It's right. I've been staring at these calculations for 3 hours. Emma, you're a multimillionaire. Actually, you're pushing 50 million once the market fully absorbs the news. The stock is still climbing. From the dining room, I heard Michael's voice. She's probably getting fired. Companies always do layoffs on weekends, so people can't cause a scene. David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course. Is this real? Like, really real? Not some accounting error or wishful thinking or... Emma. His voice became gentle but firm. I'm looking at your portfolio right now. As of 10 minutes ago, you have $43.1 million in Nexus Flow stock. The acquisition is final. Microsoft's wire transfer hit our accounts an hour ago. This is as real as it gets. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the kitchen floor, my legs suddenly unable to support me. $43 million. The number was so large, it didn't feel like money anymore. It felt like a concept, like trying to imagine the distance to the moon. Emma? You still there? I'm here. I looked through the doorway at my family, still debating my career choices like I was a case study in poor life decisions. I'm processing. Listen, you're going to need to call our legal team on Monday. There are tax implications, investment strategies to consider, estate planning. This isn't just money, Emma. This is generational wealth. You need professional help managing this. Generational wealth, I repeated numbly. Your great-grandchildren will never have to worry about college tuition. Hell, they'll never have to worry about anything. Emma, you did it. You actually did it. All those 16-hour days, all the equity you took instead of salary increases, all the risk you took on a startup that everyone said was crazy, you won. Through the doorway, I watched Patricia gesture with her coffee cup, probably explaining to everyone exactly how I could salvage my failing career. Uncle Tony was nodding sagely, as if my life choices were a problem he could solve with the right combination of tough love and practical advice. I need to go, I said to David. Family thing. Of course. But Emma, congratulations. Seriously, you earned every penny of this. I hung up and sat on the kitchen floor for another minute, staring at my phone. The investment app was sending me alert after alert. My portfolio balance kept climbing. 43 million, 44 million. The numbers were moving so fast I couldn't track them. I opened my banking app just to see if any of this was reflected there yet. It wasn't, of course.
The bank still showed my checking account balance of $3,712 and my savings account with its pathetic $8,000. By Monday, though, once the trade settled and the acquisition paperwork was complete, those numbers would be very different. My phone buzzed with a text message from my college roommate, Jenny. "Emma, are you seeing the news about Nexus Flow? Please tell me you still have your stock options." Then another from my former coworker, Marcus. "Holy shit, did you get rich today? Microsoft just bought your company for $63 billion. And another from my neighbor. "Girl, I just saw the news. Nexus Flow is your company, right? Are you okay? Are you rich?" I stood up slowly, my legs still shaky, and walked back toward the dining room. My family's voices grew clearer as I approached. "She's been on that phone for 10 minutes. It's just rude." "Probably begging them not to fire her," Uncle Tony replied. "Mark my words, this company of hers is about to go under. These tech startups, they burn through money like it's nothing, then disappear overnight. She should have listened to us years ago. But Emma always thought she was smarter than everyone else, too good for conventional success. The writing's been on the wall for a while. You can't ignore market realities forever. Eventually, you have to face facts." I stood in the doorway, watching them dissect my life with the confidence of people who had never taken a real risk, never bet on themselves, never believed in anything beyond the safety of conventional wisdom. "Facts," I said quietly. They all turned to look at me. Patricia raised her eyebrow. "Everything okay? You look pale." "You want to talk about market realities?" I walked back to my seat, my phone still buzzing with notifications. "Microsoft just bought my company." The table went quiet. Uncle Tony frowned. "What do you mean, bought your company?" "I mean Microsoft Corporation, market cap $2.7 trillion, just acquired Nexus Flow for $63 billion. The announcement went out 2 hours ago." Patricia's expression shifted from condescension to confusion. $63 billion? That's not possible. I would have heard about a deal that big. I pulled out my phone and opened the news app. The headline was right there on the front page of every major financial publication. "Microsoft acquires AI startup Nexus Flow in $63 deal." I turned the phone around so they could see it. Michael leaned forward, squinting at the screen. This is real? Very real. The stock opened at $847 per share about an hour ago. $800? My father's voice was barely above a whisper. Per share? That's the opening price. It's been climbing since then. I refreshed my portfolio app, watching the numbers update in real time. It's at $912 now. Uncle Tony was shaking his head. "What do you mean?" "I don't understand. What does this have to do with you? You said you make $85,000 a year." "That's my base salary, yes. But I also have equity, stock options, 50,000 shares that vested this morning." The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the expectant silence of people waiting for me to admit failure. This was the stunned silence of people trying to do math they weren't prepared for. Patricia was the first to speak, her voice strangely high-pitched. 50,000 shares at $900 per share is $45 million. Isla, give or take depending on where the stock closes today. My mother's coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor, sending ceramic shards and coffee across the hardwood. Nobody moved to clean it up. 45 million? Michael's lawyer brain was apparently having trouble processing the number. $45 million? As of about 3 minutes ago, yes. Uncle Tony's face had gone completely white. "You're saying you're worth $45 million? I'm saying that's what my Nexus Flow stock is worth right now. I have other investments too, but those are separate." "Other investments?" Patricia's voice cracked on the words. I thought about my diversified portfolio, the Tesla stock that had quintupled, the Bitcoin I'd accumulated during the crash, the index funds and real estate investment trusts and carefully researched growth stocks that had been compounding quietly while my family worried about my financial literacy. Some tech stocks I bought early, a little cryptocurrency, index funds, the usual. The usual? My father's hands were shaking slightly as he reached for his water glass. Emma, how much money do you have? I looked around the table at these people who had spent the last hour explaining to me why my choices were wrong, why my career was a failure, why I needed to change everything about my life to meet their standards of success. Enough? I said simply. Enough for what? Uncle Tony demanded. Enough that I'll never have to work again if I don't want to. Enough to buy any house in any neighborhood in this city. Enough to send my future children to any college in the world without them taking out loans. Enough that the car I drive is a choice, not a necessity. Patricia was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. But you drive that old Honda. You live in a studio apartment. You dress like... She gestured vaguely at my clothes. I dress like someone who prioritizes saving and investing over impressing people. I live in a studio apartment because I'd rather put money into appreciating assets than rent a bigger space I don't need. I drive an old Honda because it's reliable and paid for, and every dollar I don't spend on car payments is a dollar I can invest. But why didn't you tell us? My mother asked, her voice small. Tell you what? That I was gambling on stock options that might never be worth anything? That I was working for equity instead of salary? That I believed in a company everyone told me was a risky bet? I looked around the table. Would any of you have understood? Or would you have just had more reasons to think I was making poor financial decisions? The truth of that hung in the air like smoke. We all knew the answer. Michael cleared his throat. Emma, I think you owe us an apology. Do you? I asked. Do you really? Or are you just sorry you were wrong about the numbers? My phone rang again. This time it was my direct manager, Sarah, probably calling with more details about the transition process. I should take this. Emma, wait, Patricia said urgently. Can we talk about this? I mean, with this kind of money, you'll need investment advice.
Given your contributions to the neural network architecture, they're particularly interested in discussing your role in the combined organization. Are you available Tuesday for a preliminary conversation? With Microsoft executives? Senior leadership team. Satya Nadella's office reached out specifically about your work on the predictive algorithms. They're calling it revolutionary technology that could reshape cloud computing infrastructure. Emma, they want to offer you a position as principal engineer with a starting package that's... She paused, and I could hear papers rustling. Let's just say it makes your current compensation look like pocket change. I almost laughed at the irony. A few hours ago, my family had been lecturing me about my inadequate salary. Now, Microsoft was preparing to offer me a compensation package that would dwarf most executive salaries. What kind of package are we talking about? Base salary of $400,000 plus equity grants plus performance bonuses that could easily push your annual compensation over $1 million. And that's just the starting offer. Emma, you're about to become one of the most sought-after engineers in Silicon Valley. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see my family's faces. They weren't even pretending not to eavesdrop anymore. Uncle Tony's mouth was hanging open. Patricia looked like she was having some kind of existential crisis. I appreciate the offer, Sarah, but I'll need some time to think about it. Of course, take all the time you need. But Emma, you've earned this. Everything that's happening today, you made it possible through 4 years of brilliant work that most people couldn't even comprehend, let alone execute. After I hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a moment, processing everything that had happened in the last 20 minutes. My entire life had changed. Not just financially, though the money was certainly life-changing, but professionally, personally, fundamentally, everything was different now. I walked back to the dining room where my family sat in stunned silence. The broken coffee cup was still scattered across the floor, brown liquid seeping between the floorboards. Nobody had moved to clean it up because they were all too busy recalculating everything they thought they knew about me. So, I said, settling back into my chair, what were we discussing? Emma, my father began, his voice careful and measured. We had no idea about any of this. Your situation, your success, your wealth. My situation hasn't changed, Dad. I'm the same person who walked in here an hour ago. The same person with the same job, the same apartment, the same car. The only thing that's different is your perception of my choices. Patricia was staring at her hands. Her earlier confidence completely evaporated. I feel terrible about what I said, about your career being a dead end, about offering to help you find a real job. I was so wrong. Were you wrong about the advice, or were you wrong about the outcome? She looked up, confused. I don't understand the difference. If my stock options had been worthless, if Microsoft hadn't made this acquisition, if I was actually struggling financially, would your advice have been wrong then? Or is it only wrong now because the numbers worked out in my favor? The question hung in the air. Uncle Tony shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Well, you have to admit, Emma, it was a pretty big gamble. You got lucky. Lucky, I tasted the word. 4 years of working 16-hour days. 4 years of taking below market salary so the company could invest in growth. 4 years of studying machine learning and artificial intelligence, staying current with technology trends, building relationships with industry leaders, delivering consistent results that contributed to a product that Microsoft valued at $63 billion. That's what you call luck? That's not what I meant. Uncle Tony backtracked. What did you mean? He opened his mouth, then closed it, apparently realizing there was no good answer. Michael, ever the lawyer, tried a different approach. Emma, we're family. We were worried about you because we love you. Maybe we didn't express it well, but our concerns came from a good place. Did they? Because from where I was sitting, it felt less like concern and more like judgment. Less like love and more like embarrassment. When's the last time any of you asked me about my work? Not my salary, not my financial situation, but my actual work. The problems I solve, the technologies I develop, the impact my products have? Silence. When's the last time any of you asked me if I was happy, if I was fulfilled, if I was proud of what I was building? More silence. Instead, every conversation, every family gathering, every phone call somehow became about what I was doing wrong, about how I should change careers, move home, make different choices, live my life according to your definition of success. My mother's eyes were filling with tears. Emma, we just wanted what was best for you. No, Mom, you wanted what looked best to you, what felt safe and familiar and easy to explain to your friends. You wanted me to have the kind of success you could brag about at your book club, not the kind of success that actually mattered to me. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the suburban street where I'd grown up. The same mailboxes, the same sidewalks, the same sense of everything being exactly as it should be as long as everyone followed the rules and colored inside the lines. Do you know what the hardest part of the last 4 years has been? It wasn't the long hours or the technical challenges or the uncertainty about whether the company would succeed. It was sitting at tables like this one, defending my choices to people who had already decided I was failing. Elma, Patricia said softly, we never said you were failing. I turned around to face them. You didn't have to say it. It was in every concerned look, every helpful suggestion, every comparison to my cousin's conventional successes. It was in the way you introduced me to people, the way you avoided talking about my job, the way you changed the subject when anyone asked about my life. We're proud of you, my father said, but the words sounded hollow, rehearsed. Now you are, now that the numbers are big enough to impress you. But pride that depends on external validation isn't really pride, is it? It's relief. Relief that you don't have to be embarrassed by me anymore. Uncle Tony cleared his throat. Emma, you're being a little harsh. We're your family. We've always supported you. Have you? Because I have a very different memory of the last 4 years. I remember being told my job wasn't real. I remember being advised to quit and start over. I remember being lectured about financial responsibility by people who had never taken a meaningful risk in their lives. I walked back to the table and sat down, but this time I didn't feel small or defensive. I felt calm, clear, free. Here's what I've learned today. Money doesn't change who you are, but it reveals who everyone else is. An hour ago, I was the family disappointment. Now I'm the family success story. But I'm the same person. I made the same choices. I took the same risks. I worked just as hard. The only thing that changed was your perception of the outcome. What kind of package are we talking about? Base salary of $400,000, plus equity grants, plus performance bonuses that could easily push your annual compensation over $1 million. And that's just the starting offer. Emma, you're about to become one of the most sought-after engineers in Silicon Valley. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see my family's faces. They weren't even pretending not to eavesdrop anymore. Uncle Tony's mouth was hanging open. Patricia looked like she was having some kind of existential crisis. I appreciate the offer, Sarah, but I'll need some time to think about it. Of course, take all the time you need. But Emma, you've earned this. Everything that's happening today, you made it possible through 4 years of brilliant work that most people couldn't even comprehend, let alone execute. And finally, me listener, don't forget to tap that like button if you're enjoying anything in this story. It might seem like a small thing to you, but it means the world to me and helps me reach more people like you.